To news at home now, and a 4-decade-old multi-million-dollar family business has been razed to the ground by one of the biggest fires Melbourne's ever seen. 7 reporter Claire Brady joins us now from what's left of Lombard, the paper people in Flemington. Good morning, Claire. This fire's gone on for hours and hours. Is it under control?
Well, not as yet, Chris. Of course, the fire started about 1 a.m. and with products inside the building such as paper and plastics, it didn't take long until it was well alight and there were flames reported leaping metres into the air. Now, it took around 2.5 hours to bring the fire under control, with firefighters called in from around the city to try and contain the blaze. It's still smouldering as we speak, and they don't expect it to be put out completely until well into the weekend.
Claire, firefighters are saying it's probably one of the city's biggest fires. What's the damage so far?
Well, the damage bill is a huge $25 million, which is a huge blow to this family company. Of course, Lombard's has been known as the paper people since 1967, supplying the city with party decorations from streamers, paper bags and all sorts of decorations. And of course, coming straight near Christmas, it's a huge blow for the company. With me here, Chris, I have Claude Lombard, who's the factory owner. Claude, what sort of blow is this for you personally?
Well, initially this morning it was, it's a fire, and then as I saw it melt and the building melted, it was not such a blow. But then as it got more and more, it sort of sunk in, and it's just a building, nobody died, and we lost 40 years of business. We've got many offices, and the staff. The most emotional thing about this whole issue is that the staff and the people that have come out of the woodwork to help us has been the most emotional part about it. I'm still in shock. I'm a bit dizzy. It's huge. It's tons and tons of stock, cups, paper bags, serviettes for the whole industry. But the staff have rallied. The Moonee Valley City Council gave us a community centre to use as a crisis centre for our staff to use as a base for business. We've been offered buildings and...
so you'll be back on your feet, you hope, soon?
All our reps are out on the road still on Monday, and all the orders will be funneled through Sydney. And our Sydney office will deliver to the clients in Melbourne. So we've been around for 37 years, so we know what to do.
Good. Claude, that's Claude, and I'm sure if he's the boss there, they've got plenty of confidence to get back on their feet, Chris.
Today, with Steve Liebman and Tracy.
More than $15 million worth of damage has been caused after a fire broke out at a paper factory in Melbourne. The entire warehouse was destroyed, the blaze also spreading to a nearby pistol range, but luckily no one was injured.
Once the blaze took hold in the paper factory, there was little firefighters could do. By 3:30 this morning, Flemington's Lombard, the paper people, was completely destroyed. All its products ready for Christmas up in flames.
It is a very distressing time, and whilst we've tried as far as possible to do things such as get computers out, rescue parts of the business which may be able to continue on, it's been very difficult because of the intensity of the fire.
Fire crews had to dodge the flames to rescue what they could.
We've been hampered by a lack of water supply.
The entire 50 by 30 metre warehouse, dispatch and shopping centre was destroyed. The estimated damage bill placed at $15 million. But fire crews had another potential disaster to contend with, the blaze spreading to a nearby pistol range, fears of exploding ammunition adding to the danger. It's not yet known what caused the fire. Juliet Sali, National 9 News.
A huge fire at a Melbourne paper factory could burn for another 24 hours. The entire warehouse was destroyed, the blaze also spreading to a nearby pistol range.
The blaze began after midnight and was still burning when the 70 staff arrived for work this morning. It took 96 firefighters 2 hours to bring the flames under control. The warehouse stocked party supplies and paper goods, which fueled the inferno.
The fire was very well involved when we first arrived on scene. We've been hampered by a lack of water supply.
When fire trucks arrived, they immediately called for more backup. A fire commander was also lifted above the factory to look for hotspots. Owner Claude Lombard has already estimated $20 million worth of damage to his head office. in what has been described as one of Melbourne's largest fires.
It really is a tragedy. We will rally and we will use our branches in other states.
And with 7 weeks until Christmas, Lombards have lost their warehouse and their stock. But after 37 years in the business, the company planned to rebuild. But it's not only the factory that has been affected. The 8,000 square metre premises also housed indoor rock climbing, a pistol range and centre for teens with disabilities. All have been destroyed.
We don't have it anymore. It's a great loss to the school. It's something that we valued highly.
The only bright note was that firefighters managed to save Harry the cockatoo, who had been with the family for 20 years.
He was a bit angry, but no, he didn't get a nip in, but I think he was pretty keen to.
There were concerns about smoke drifting in the direction of the nearby Royal Children's Hospital, but at this stage there have been no injuries from the fire. After 9 hours, the factory is still smouldering here on Mount Alexander Road, and it's going to be another few hours before the fire is completely put out. Then they begin the task of finding out exactly how the fire began. The police have already ruled the area a crime scene while they begin their investigations. Back to you.
The 11:30 News with Natasha Belling.
$25 million worth of damage in one of Melbourne's worst ever fires. The blazes destroyed a prominent paper factory, but not before firefighters saved a beloved bird.
The sign says largest party shops in the universe, and this is one of Melbourne's biggest ever fires. Flames in the massive warehouse, stocked chock-a-block with paper and plastic, burned a hole in the owners' hearts. 4 decades of family toil engulfed in a spectacular and unstoppable blaze. Dozens of hoses couldn't save the contents from burning, which included tons of Christmas stock about to be delivered to retail outlets and interstate branches. A pistol range and rock climbing centre are also in ruin, though a nearby car yard was saved. Neighbouring major hospitals were told to shut doors and windows. The damage bill is $25 million and rising.
It probably hasn't sunk in yet. It is a disaster without any adjectives before it.
The fire was so entrenched and so hard to fight that city people were still watching smoke billow out of the factory as they drove to work several hours later. The silver lining came in the form of a ruffled cockatoo who's been with the Lombards for 2 decades and was rescued.
I said, "Where's the cockatoo, Harry?" They said, "Oh, he's still here." They cut a hole in the wall. We rolled the roller door up, pulled him out, and then pulled his cage out, and he's 100%.
He was quite upset, I'll tell you that. Yeah, he was screaming and carrying on, but it's good to see he's safe anyway.
Melbourne's traffic is suffering from a major road and tram line closure, but the city's bypass is dropping its tolls to help commuters get around. Paul Kennedy, 10 News.
The 4:30 News with David Johnston.
Now, back home, one of Melbourne's largest fires will continue to burn for several days after destroying a factory overnight. The blaze began at the Lombard factory after midnight and left a damage bill of around $25 million. Inside was a paper warehouse, pistol range and climbing centre. But a pet parrot given to the owner 20 years ago survived.
He was in the showroom and the fire was behind him, and they cut a hole in the wall. I said, "Where's the cockatoo, Harry?" They said, "Oh, he's still here." They cut a hole in the wall. We rolled the roller door up, pulled him out, and then pulled his cage out, and he's 100%.
90 firefighters battled for hours to contain the blaze. Thick smoke billowed across the city for much of the morning. Mr. Lombard says Christmas stock was destroyed, but the business will survive.
First at 5. 10 News with Mal Walden and Jennifer Hansen.
Good evening. First tonight, Flemington's Lombard paper warehouse has been destroyed in one of Melbourne's biggest ever fires. The owners are vowing to rebuild from an inferno that's affected commuters, surrounding suburbs and devastated staff.
Melbourne's brigade of firefighters was a mismatch against flames large enough to light up a suburb. The sign says largest party shops in the universe, and this is one of the city's biggest ever blazes. The destruction of a warehouse stocked chock-a-block with paper and plastic burned a hole in the owners' hearts. 4 decades of family toil engulfed in a spectacular inferno. Dozens of hoses couldn't save the contents, which included tons of Christmas stock about to be delivered to retail outlets and interstate branches. Neighbouring major hospitals were told to close their windows to choking plumes. The damage bill is a monster.
It probably hasn't sunk in yet. It is a disaster without any adjectives before it.
The fire was so entrenched and so hard to fight that city people were still watching smoke billow out of the factory as they drove to work several hours later. The silver lining came in the form of a ruffled cockatoo who's been with the Lombards for 2 decades and was rescued.
I said, "Where's the cockatoo, Harry?" They said, "Oh, he's still here." They cut a hole in the wall, we rolled the roller door up, pulled him out and then pulled his cage out, and he's 100%.
Firefighter Mitch Simmons was one of the courageous band who carried the living icon to safety, narrowly avoiding Harry's infamous bite.
He was quite upset, I'll tell you that. Yeah, he was screaming and carrying on, but it's good to see he's safe anyway.
Lombard has a 20% stake of Australia's paper industry.
We've had nearly 38 years of growth, and we're opening 3 new shops in the next 12 weeks, and all the opening stock had been picked and was ready to dispatch on Monday. All from here. The show will go on. It's a tragedy. The family's very upset, but we're very strong and very resilient people, and we've been around for a long time.
Paul Kennedy, 10 News.
Damage from the blaze has been put at more than $20 million, with the building also home to a sports complex and school workshop. The Premier has promised to do what he can to help restore the business.
It's not often the Premier tours a fire scene, such is the magnitude of this morning's blaze.
It's 8,000 square metres.
The 38-year-old company is one of the government's major suppliers, and with millions of dollars damage, the Premier will lend a hand.
I've said to Claude, of course, on his business, we'll have someone contacting you today from the industry department to facilitate any feasibility work that's to be done for the new site to get it up and running as quickly as possible.
Others are pitching in.
I mean, the phone hasn't stopped all morning. Warehouses, money, buildings, distribution, anything we want. It has been unbelievable.
The blaze also wiped out a pistol range and indoor climbing centre. A neighbouring car yard had its office and stock damaged.
If I was spreading that badly, I could have been dead.
Struggling to come to grips with the loss, intellectually disabled teenagers who'd worked in the annex sheltered workshop and canteen. The students from Ascot Vale Special School came to look at the devastation this morning.
They're very unsure of, well, where they're going to go and what's going to happen to the program.
The government's pledged to help the school as well. The impact is starting to show on the paper magnate.
At 2 o'clock I sort of felt all right, 3 o'clock, but now it's sinking in. This is a major amount of stock that's gone.
The fire could have had dire consequences for the business in the lead up to the busy Christmas period, but ever the optimist, Claude Lombard expects to be back in operation by Tuesday, distributing goods from the company's Sydney branch. Mount Alexander Road was closed to trams and traffic. Drivers diverted onto CityLink will have tolls waived. Max Butcher, 10 News.
And with the afternoon peak underway, reporter Max Butcher joins us live now from the fire scene. And Max, plenty of activity behind you there. Any easier for motorists though this evening?
Well, so far it's not too bad, Mal. Certainly not as bad as this morning, as we say, so far. We're still a fair way from the peak, the height of the peak hour, and so the traffic is flowing quite well. As we say, Mount Alexander Road is closed and traffic is again being diverted onto the CityLink. We've seen already, they're not mucking around, we've seen cranes and workmen move in here and start pulling down sections of the building. We've seen parts of the roof being pulled down already. Now, authorities are saying that the building is still unsafe and is still unstable, and so that means that this section, at least, of Mount Alexander Road will be closed until at least noon tomorrow.
Yes, and tram passengers had been forced to use services on Racecourse Road. Is that still the case?
Yes, well, of course, with this road shut, no trams are getting through, so it's a bit of a stroll to Racecourse Road. Now, the routes being affected are routes 55, 57 and 59. Now, if you're travelling on those routes later this afternoon, you can expect some delays because those routes are serviced by the Essendon depot, and any trams from the Essendon depot having to go the long way round.
And finally, the pall of smoke that we saw for most of the day, is that cleared yet?
Well, it's not as bad as it was this morning. Certainly, it's still there. The structure is still smouldering. If you had asthma and you were close up to the building, you'd certainly have some trouble, and it's a bit hard on the old eyes, I can tell you. But